We live in a world where everyone is waiting for someone else to lead, waiting for someone else to fix what's broken, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect opportunity. And because we're waiting, too many of us forget the most powerful truth. You don't have to wait to change something. You can be the difference right now. We have this habit of underestimating the small stuff. We think impact has to look dramatic, loud, visible, and big enough to shake the world in a single moment. We believe that unless we're launching companies, writing bestsellers, or leading massive organizations, what we do doesn't really matter. But the truth is, it's the small actions, the ones so ordinary they almost seem invisible, that end up creating the biggest ripple effects. Think about it for a second. Every single change you've experienced in your life didn't happen overnight. It happened because of a series of tiny, consistent choices that compounded over time. One workout doesn't change your health. One kind word doesn't transform a relationship. One courageous decision doesn't define your entire character. But do those things consistently, over and over, and suddenly you look back and realize you've built something massive out of something small. Here's the mistake so many people make. They talk themselves out of action because it feels too small to matter. They think, what's the point of saying something nice to a stranger? What's the point of taking 5 minutes to call my mom? What's the point of reading just 10 pages of this book? And yet, those small actions are exactly what stack up. The truth is, the difference between the person who creates impact and the person who doesn't isn't about talent, luck, or resources. It's about who chooses to show up in the small ways consistently. Imagine a drop of water falling into a still pond. On its own, it seems insignificant. But what happens? Ripples spread. One tiny drop reaches far beyond where it fell. That's exactly what your small actions do. They ripple. They affect people you may never even meet. And those ripples carry forward. Take kindness as an example. You smile at someone at the grocery store. They feel a little lighter. They go home and have more patience with their kids. Their kids feel loved and cared for. And tomorrow, they treat their classmates differently. None of that chain reaction is visible to you. But your single small choice set it in motion. That's the power of the ripple effect. Consistency is the amplifier. A single act of kindness is beautiful. But consistent kindness, that's life-changing. A single workout is nice, but consistent workouts, that's transformation. A single courageous choice is admirable, but consistent courage, that's legacy. The small things matter most when you repeat them, because repetition compounds into strength, impact, and influence. And here's the part we forget. Big results are nothing more than small actions done repeatedly over time. Success in any area of life isn't about doing something huge once. It's about doing something small, consistently, even when it's boring, even when no one's watching, even when you don't feel like it. So if you're waiting for the perfect big moment to be the difference, you're going to miss it. The difference isn't in some grand opportunity that might or might not come your way. It's in the choices you make today. It's in how you show up in conversations, how you spend your time, how you treat people, and how you decide to honor your own commitments. Those small actions are not small. They are the seeds of massive change. When you decide to embrace the small, consistent actions, whether it's kindness, courage, discipline, or generosity, you become the drop of water that sends ripples across an entire pond. And the most extraordinary part is this: you don't just change your life, you give others permission to believe they can change theirs too. So start small, stay consistent, trust the ripple. That's how small actions become unstoppable waves of difference. We all get caught in the trap of perfection. You know the voice I'm talking about, the one that says, you're not ready yet, you don't know enough, you're gonna make mistakes, people are going to judge you. That voice convinces us to wait until everything lines up just right before we take action. And so we stall, we overthink, we let opportunities pass, All because we think we need to be perfect before we can make a difference. But here's the truth, you don't need perfection. You need courage. Every single person you've ever admired for making a difference wasn't perfect when they started. They weren't fearless either. They were scared. They had doubts. They made mistakes. But they had the courage to step forward anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of fear. It's saying, I'm scared, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm going to take the step anyway. That's what separates those who create change from those who sit on the sidelines. Not intelligence, not resources, not flawless execution, just courage. The problem with chasing perfection is that it keeps you stuck. You tell yourself, I'll do it when I feel ready. But the secret nobody tells you is that you'll never actually feel fully ready. Readiness doesn't come first. Action does. Readiness is something you create by doing, not by waiting. Courage pushes you to take that first imperfect step, and once you do, confidence starts to build. And with confidence, you begin to feel ready. That's the cycle, but it starts with courage. Think about it. When has anything meaningful in your life come from perfection? It hasn't. The job you got, the relationships you built, the skills you learned, they all came through trial, error, and messy action. Perfection is a myth, but courage is real. Courage is accessible to anyone right now, in this very moment. Here's something powerful. Courage doesn't have to look loud. It doesn't have to be standing on a stage or leading a protest. Sometimes courage is quiet. It's speaking up at a meeting when your heart is pounding. It's raising your hand in class, even when you're not sure you'll get the answer right. It's admitting you need help instead of pretending you're fine. It's choosing to be vulnerable with someone you love. Courage comes in all sizes, and none of them require perfection. When you decide to be the difference, you're not saying, I have all the answers. You're saying, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to take the step even if I don't know where it leads. That willingness is what changes everything, because people don't connect to perfection. They connect to authenticity. They connect to someone who's willing to be real, who's willing to stumble, and who's brave enough to keep going anyway. Perfection is polished but distant. Courage is messy but magnetic. And when you have the courage to act, you inspire others to act too. Your courage gives them permission to step into their own. That's why courage is contagious. It multiplies. So here's the invitation. Stop waiting to be perfect. Stop waiting to have the flawless plan. Stop waiting until you're fearless. None of that is coming. What's available to you right now is courage. The simple, powerful choice to take one step, even with shaky hands and a racing heart. Being the difference starts right there, with courage, with that decision to move forward, imperfectly but authentically. And when you choose courage over perfection, you not only change your own life, you become the spark that shows others they can too. One of the most underrated truths about life is this: people are watching you, not in a creepy, paranoid way, but in a very human way. We underestimate how much influence we carry simply by the way we live our lives. Every choice you make sends a message. Every action you take is an example. And here's the powerful part: your choices can inspire others, often without you even knowing it. Think about the people who have shaped you. Sometimes it wasn't their words, it was their actions. Maybe it was the way a teacher stayed late after school to help students who were struggling. Maybe it was a friend who kept showing up for you when life got hard. Maybe it was a parent who modeled resilience in the face of challenges. They may not have given a motivational speech or announced their intentions, but their choices influence you deeply. That's the ripple effect of human behavior. We're constantly inspiring each other, for better or worse, through the way we show up, which means every small choice you make, how you respond to stress, how you treat people, how you pursue your goals, can quietly inspire someone else to believe, to try, to keep going. The irony is, most of the time, you won't even know it's happening. The stranger who overhears you encouraging your child at the park. Inspired. The coworker who watches you take responsibility instead of blaming others. Inspired. The neighbor who notices you showing kindness when it would have been easier to stay silent. Inspired. You may never hear about it, but your example can be the exact thing someone else needs to see in order to believe in themselves. And here's the kicker: you don't have to be extraordinary to inspire others. In fact, it's often your ordinary moments that do it best, because people don't relate to perfection. They relate to honesty, effort, and persistence. When you make the hard choice to keep moving forward despite obstacles, you silently remind others that they can do the same. This is why it's so important to take ownership of how you live, not just for your own sake, but because your life is leaving fingerprints on the lives around you. Whether you realize it or not, you are setting an example. The question is, what kind of example are you setting? Are you inspiring others to shrink back or to step forward? To give up or to keep going? To live in fear or to live with courage? Sometimes inspiration comes from the very moments we consider failures. Picture someone who falls, stumbles, gets back up, and keeps trying. That's inspiring because it's real. It shows others that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about refusing to stay down. By embracing your humanity and continuing anyway, you demonstrate strength in a way perfection never could. This truth is liberating, because it means you don't have to set out to be inspirational. You just have to live with intention. Be kind, be brave, be consistent, do your best. Even when you don't feel like anyone's paying attention, they are. And even if they never say it, your example might be the thing that pushes them forward on their own path. So, the next time you're tempted to think your choices don't matter, remember this: someone is watching, someone is learning from you, someone is being inspired by the way you show up today. That's a responsibility, yes, but it's also an incredible opportunity. You have the chance to be the quiet spark in someone else's story, simply by the way you live yours. And that's one of the most powerful ways to be the difference. When we think about extraordinary impact, our minds usually jump straight to the big names, the icons, the leaders, the world changers. We picture people with influence, money, or status. And because of that, most of us quietly disqualify ourselves. We think, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have the resources, the platform, or the power to make a difference. But here's the truth: ordinary people are the ones who change the world, because they're the ones who decide to show up different. History is filled with examples of everyday people who made choices that transformed everything. Rosa Parks was not a celebrity. She was not a politician. She was an ordinary woman who made one extraordinary decision: to stay seated when the world told her to stand. And that single act of courage sparked a movement that changed the course of history. It doesn't take status. It doesn't take wealth. It doesn't take a title. What it takes is the willingness to show up differently when it matters most. That difference can look like choosing kindness in a culture of criticism. It can look like speaking the truth when silence feels safer. It can look like offering your time, your energy, or your encouragement when someone else is struggling. These are the ways ordinary people create extraordinary impact. The mistake we make is thinking we need to be extraordinary before we act. That's backward. Impact isn't about who you are before you start. It's about how you choose to show up in the moment. And showing up differently doesn't always mean making a scene. Sometimes it's subtle. It's refusing to gossip when everyone else is tearing someone down. It's standing up for the person who can't stand up for themselves. It's walking into a room with energy and optimism when negativity is pulling everyone else down. The ordinary becomes extraordinary when you decide to do what most people won't. Most people complain. Most people wait. Most people blend in. So when you choose action over excuses, courage over fear, generosity over selfishness, you stand out. You become the difference. And here's the part most people forget: extraordinary impact is rarely felt in the moment. You might think your effort is too small, too unnoticed, too ordinary to matter. But the person you encourage remembers. The person you stood up for feels stronger. The group you energized walks away with a different outlook. Your choice plants a seed that grows long after you've moved on. Think about the ripple effect of showing up differently. A teacher who believes in their students changes the way those kids see their own potential. A nurse who goes the extra mile doesn't just treat patients. They restore dignity and hope. A parent who models resilience shapes a generation's mindset. These aren't famous people on a stage. These are ordinary people whose choices create extraordinary impact. The truth is, you don't need to be special to make a difference. You just need to be intentional. Show up with integrity. Show up with courage. Show up with heart. That's what makes your presence powerful. And when you do, you'll realize that extraordinary impact isn't about doing one giant thing. It's about doing the ordinary things differently, consistently, until they add up to something life-changing. So stop waiting for a title, a platform, or permission. You don't need to be anyone other than who you are right now to create impact. Ordinary people, choosing to show up differently, have always been the ones to spark change. And you have that same opportunity today. Because being the difference doesn't mean being extraordinary. It means showing up in ordinary moments in an extraordinary way. One of the greatest myths we believe is that change is someone else's job. We sit back and wait for leaders, governments, companies, or the right person to fix what's broken. We tell ourselves, when someone finally does something about this, things will get better. And while we're waiting, nothing changes. Because the truth is, this change doesn't happen when you wait. It happens when you step up. Every movement, every innovation, every breakthrough you've ever read about started because someone decided, I'm not waiting anymore. They didn't have it all figured out. They didn't have the perfect plan, but they had the courage to take responsibility instead of passing it on. That's the moment when change begins. Waiting is safe. Waiting is comfortable. Waiting gives us an excuse, but it also keeps us stuck. The job you want won't magically land in your lap. The relationship you dream of won't build itself. The problems in your community won't disappear just because you hope they will. Nothing changes until someone decides to act, and that someone can be you. Here's what most people don't realize is stepping up doesn't always mean doing something dramatic. It's not always about leading a protest or building a business from scratch. Sometimes stepping up is as simple as raising your hand in a meeting to share your idea instead of staying silent. It's choosing to address an issue in your family instead of sweeping it under the rug. It's offering to help when everyone else is too busy looking away. Change starts small, but it starts with you. The reason people wait is because stepping up feels scary. There's risk. You might fail. You might be judged. You might discover it's harder than you thought. But here's the reality, doing nothing carries a bigger cost. If you don't step up, the problem stays the same, or worse, it grows. And someone else who might have been waiting for you to lead never finds the courage because they didn't see you act. When you decide to step up, something powerful happens. You create momentum. Your action inspires others to act. And suddenly, what felt impossible begins to shift. Think about it. Change doesn't start with thousands of people moving at once. It starts with one person saying yes. One person deciding enough is enough. One person willing to risk imperfection in order to create progress. Stepping up also reshapes how you see yourself. The moment you take responsibility, you stop being a bystander in your own life. You stop waiting for permission and start realizing your own power. And that shift from passive to acting, from waiting to doing, is the spark that lights everything else. It's easy to convince yourself that you're too small to matter. But history proves otherwise. Every major change started with someone ordinary making an extraordinary decision to step forward. If they had waited, nothing would have happened. And if you wait, nothing will either. So here's the challenge: stop passing the responsibility to someone else. Stop telling yourself it's not your place or not the right time. The right time is now. The right person might just be you. Change is not out there. It's right here in the choices you make today. The difference between a life that inspires and a life that settles comes down to whether or not you're willing to step up. And the good news, you don't need to change the whole world tomorrow. You just need to change something today. That small step forward is how real change begins. So stop waiting. Decide to step up, because the world doesn't change when someone else finally acts. It changes when you do.